Okay, we are recording. Um, this is David P. France, and I'm coming to you from Basel, Switzerland. And before we get started, I want to first of all thank everyone for watching the videos and commenting and watching us as we grow. We really appreciate all of you, and we hope that you spread the word by liking the video, sharing the video, and subscribing to the channels, both on YouTube and on BitChute. Today, or tonight rather, on my time, I'm speaking with Renee Ambush. Renee is an impartation strategist, and we're going to get into that very quickly so that we get an explanation. But let's just tell people how we met. My cousin Muffy put me in touch with you. Currently you're in Georgia, but you grew up in Baltimore.
Baltimore, born and raised, so proud.
Born and raised. I was born in Baltimore as well. Most of my family is from Baltimore or Maryland. Generally are outside. And yeah, that's it. Baltimore has a unique, how do you say? I want to say history. A different word rather than history. Reputation.
I think we have a different culture.
We have a different culture. Okay, yeah, exactly. And we're going to go into that. But first of all, tell us, what is an impartation strategist? And then we're going to go from there.
I always first tell you what an impartation strategist isn't. Okay. And then I end with what I am. So what I say is that an impartation strategist is not a life coach, because I'm not the giver of life. So I can't coach you on something that I didn't give you. I also let people know that I'm not a motivational speaker. When one is motivated, their emotions are ignited and you feel good, because that's what motivation is. You feel really good. But in fact, I'm an impartation. I impart. I actually bring out what's innately in you by birth, your purpose, and help you with the own strategies to utilize what you have inside of yourself to be an overcomer. So you're not just feeling good for a minute. It's not just something that's, 45 minutes, she said all these nice things, but I strategically or give you strategies to be able to overcome any challenges. So it's nothing that you continue to repeat, because now you have strategies and different tactics to be able to help you with that. So in short, I pull out of you what you already have inside of you and allow you to use those things to continue to overcome in life. There you have it.
And part of, I think, the impartation, this concept, is it biblical, or does it come from the?
Absolutely. It is definitely, I do have a spiritual conviction, and in reading the New Testament of the Bible, it started with Elizabeth and Mary. It's like when she went to meet her, both were pregnant, and it said that the baby leaped inside of her. So this is what I do. I'm that person, usually when I'm talking to people, they're like, oh my God, you make me feel like I can fly. Like, you just gave me like things that I didn't even think about, to see how I can change how I'm thinking and how I'm actually doing things. So I feel like when you are connected with another individual, such as myself, an impartation strategist, you should not only walk away feeling good, but now, like I said, be able to do those things that you weren't currently able to overcome. So yeah, it definitely has a biblical connection. We should be touching the inner core of different individuals, in order for them to leap into purpose and destiny. That's what I'm all about.
So how did you come to be an impartation strategist? I mean, there's a story. Of course, I know a little bit about the story, so I'm cheating a bit. So how did you become this impartation strategist? I mean, it clearly is something that is not, I don't want to use the word the norm, right? That's not, it's not the path most taken.
No, it definitely started with dealing with self. And after having a history of sexual abuse with incest and molestation, I lost a lot of me. There was no identity. I had no validation. I mean, I went through a lot of things that had caused me to veer away from who I was. And it was totally distractors from me even looking at my own self and what my purpose and destiny was. And all the time, though I have a history of encouraging people, like I said, that encouragement was only short-lived. But once I had my spiritual journey and began to deal with the core inner self of myself, I was now in a position that I could actually help other people, not just be survivors. And I just want to kind of throw that out there, because survival literally is saying that I'm just scratching the surface. I'm just a little head above the water to keep me from drowning. But when you impart and you give people those tactics, like I said, within themselves to get there, you're teaching them that they're overcomers, so you've overcome all of that. I had to overcome the abuse from my past. I mean, a lot of it, like I said, was sexual, but, I've had some emotional abuse and physical trauma and things of that nature that said, wait, I've veered off from my purpose. And once I honed back in on that spiritually, I was able to now be able to help impart into others for them to do the same thing.
How did you know that you were off the path? What sort of things were manifesting that you said, now wait a minute, like this is not, who I am. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, my background is mental health, and, we deal a lot with diagnoses. And two of the most main ones that we hear a lot is anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. And depression really is, we know it's medical, but it's really not dealing with the core things in self that hold us bondage. So after having years of depression and a belt with anxiety here and there, I'm like, wait, this can't be who I am. This is not what I'm purposed to do, Mm-hmm. This isn't what I was born for. Again, I have biblical beliefs, and there's a wording that says that I come that you have life and in abundance. No matter what I was doing, I was not living an abundant life because there were still things that were holding me bondage and holding me hostage to not being my true self.
Mm-hmm. So how did you begin to deal with what was holding you hostage? I mean, what do you remember specifically?
I would say a changed mindset.
Changed mindset?
Changed mindset. I started thinking differently. And after thinking differently, because I know we tell people, oh, these affirmation statements, so you can say them all day long, but if you don't believe them, they mean nothing. They fall to the floor. Mm-hmm. But I actually started changing my mindset that if this is not what I'm supposed to do, then I need to be on a spiritual journey. I need to be on a journey to deal with self, to see what it is that I'm supposed to be doing then. Because I know that I wasn't birthed to be depressed. Mm-hmm. No one is. We're birthed to live in purpose, an abundant life. But after, again, like I said, we can get real deep. I'm an open book. After several suicide attempts and, other things that just had me literally mentally tripping. I was just like, okay, it's got to be more. So I got to thinking, well, if there's got to be more, where does more start from? It doesn't start from the external. It starts from the internal. Let me start dealing with the things on the inside that's causing me to think the negative and change that thought. It only takes 60 seconds to change a negative thought to a positive one. That would be my first book called To Think About It. Yeah, that would be that one. To just, we really don't think about what we think about. And then once we really start honing in on what we think about, we have to then go to the core of why we thought that. And really, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. So we have to deal with the issues of the heart so that we can understand why we're speaking what we're speaking. And then when we see that we're speaking a lot of negative and holding ourselves hostage, we can change that thought, change that speech, and change our actions.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did you do this by yourself, or did you have a support group or support system to move you through this?
I want to tell you that I did, because I don't want to really look like, superhero. Mm-hmm. I didn't. I had people along the road that was strategically placed at times to assist. But for the most part, this is something that I had to do on my own. And I'm grateful now that I've overcome and come on this side, but it wasn't always that way. And sometimes I know that we need people to walk alongside us, but there are some times we have to really go to the Isle of Patmos by ourselves and really deal with ourselves.
So just to be clear for people, what circumstances or how did you grow up in Baltimore? To give people, you go into detail as much as you feel comfortable with.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, how did you come up in Baltimore? So describe some of the things that um, helped to shape you prior to this awakening, can I call
Yeah.
it?
I grew up in Baltimore, in West Baltimore, inner city, generations on generations in one household. That brought a lot of fun. It could also bring some other stuff, which it did, but it brought a lot of fun. My memories growing up prior to any changes was that of, early morning cartoons and,
Right,
Captain Chesapeake and Romper
right,
Room, Scooby, a bowl of cereal,
right,
and living in West Baltimore, we were adamant about keeping those steps clean. They had to be white
right.
porcelain. So
Mhm.
you got to calm it out, Ajax, and you would scrape it, and you played all day and you had fun and you had friends and stuff like that. I remembered like the McGruff crime dog and officers coming to your neighborhood who knew you personally, and you were looking, they were friendly. You looked for them to come, like I said, that family. And it was after the experiences of the sexual violations that it started having me to withdraw.
Mhm.
Um, Again, go into the show, and on the outward, I was one person, but on the inside, I was crying. It was silent screams. So it took actually a friend to invite me to her church, and they were talking about some stuff, and I'm like, I literally kind of felt different. I was hearing somebody tell me I was worth something, that I was supposed to be something, and I'm like, and here it is. I'm like, at the time, I think like 16 years old, and I'm thinking, yeah, 16, 17, I'm thinking I've got 10 years of people abusing me and making me feel worthless. And I've got this one person telling me that that's not why I was born. That wasn't my purpose. And I
Right.
really am connecting with that. That was the beginning of my journey of, wait, I know these things happen to me, but who am I? Because I
Mhm.
was allowing the things that happened to me to define my character and who I was, instead of me actually finding out who I was created and made to be, and not through my experiences.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I mean, when I started the channel, it was because I thought a lot of people who were creatives, I call them creatives or creators,
Mhm.
and that includes thought leaders, that includes writers. Anytime you have to create something from nothing,
Yes.
right? So part of the issue that I started to see was that I didn't receive that validation.
Hmm.
And I was a creator. But then I started to see where this could expand, or how it could expand, and how it affected more than just my situation. I
And we
see
look
it.
at it, David, I'm sorry, we look at it, like you said, I didn't have a supportive family to tell me things that, oh my gosh, you're a great singer, you're a great
Yeah,
writer, you're a great, no, it was, listen, shut up, don't be seen, don't be heard, and you're
yeah,
like, so you don't get that validation. So you don't know how creative you are, you know what I mean? Until you actually swim against the current, and start doing something different. When I was growing up, I was told, get yourself a good government job, get yourself a good city job. Well, I did that. I worked for Baltimore City Police Department, and then I worked for the government for almost 10 years. And I probably had like a zillion secret nervous breakdowns because I was in positions that weren't meant for me. But that was the path that we were given in like the 80s and 90s from our past generation, because that's what they knew. They knew to
right.
get a good job, go to college, get a good job, and just be quiet, accept the check, and just go. And it's just like, as you said, creators. It's like, I can't be happy with just that. I'm like, it's something missing.
Yeah. But wait, let's say, for example, that we can talk about. I mean, you've done a lot of different things, and not just in mental health or public health. You've done a lot of different things. So you can tell the audience that you are a singer. We can say that, right? You
Yeah.
are an artist. You are,
A
you've
public
done,
author.
you have your license to do hair, right? You
Yeah,
went
I've
to,
done hair.
basically after the first time we had a conversation, I said you were like a one-stop shop community center, right? So anybody that wanted to come to you, you would have something to pull out of your chest to assist. Give the audience an idea of the types of things. We can start with the singing because I think it's the story behind the singing and how you became a singer, and actually is fantastic.
And it literally goes back to that validation. So here I am, about 19 years old. I had been given little mini concerts on my porch on Oswego Avenue in Baltimore City at age 8 or 9. I'm like singing on the porch and I've got my audience. So, I'm feeling like, oh, I can sing, I can sing. And, here it is about 19 to 20. I've been singing from like 9 to about then. I auditioned at Baltimore Arena for a play. And I believe it was like Mickey Howard or something. I was so excited. I'm like, yes. So I go and I audition for a play, and there was a gentleman that was with me, and I respected him in music. He was just, I didn't know anybody in Baltimore at that time who was connected to people who were going to California and New York. And, so I'm like, this guy is here. My friends are here. And my friends are cheering me on because they're like, oh, girl, you can sing, do it. This one guy, I go up there and I sing and I come off the stage and I'm so excited. And his words were, don't quit your day job because they are not going to call you. Oh, I was crushed. I'm like, wait, I just got up the nerve to do this. And like this person that I respected in the industry has just torn down all my dreams. Well, fast forward, crazily enough, I married that person. Yeah, I married this person who was also a musician. So everybody just expected us to make melodies and awesome music. And I was so shocked and distraught that I would not sing in front of this individual at all, right? Now, mind you, I was still singing with other bands and other groups and doing stage plays, but in front of him one-on-one, wouldn't do it. Further along, one day he invites me to a cookout that some friends of his and a friend of his was coming in town. And his friend came into town and they were talking about, their days when they, played with different artists. They were throwing out some big names too. They like Janet and, and Prince. And I'm going, yeah, whatever. You guys are making this up. So I'm looking at the gentleman that he wanted to introduce me to. I'm finding him on social media, like, is this person really real? And come to find out, not only was his resume real, but he was actually my cousin. So
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Are you so serious? So we found out that we're cousins. And I then leave Maryland. And again, another story. I left Maryland and I moved to California very abruptly because my oldest son passed away. And his only child was in the California foster care system. And as her grandmother, my only grandchild, I left everything in Baltimore and I moved to California to get her out the foster care system. Well, while I was there, I hear my inner self again, because I've done all this transformation with self to understand or figure out what is my purpose, what am I supposed to do? And I hear this inner voice say, I never forgot. And I'm thinking, okay, am I tripping? What's going on? And I'm like, never forgot. And it goes back to what we're saying about the affirmations, because things had went a different way for me. And I kind of left singing alone. I'm like, I became a mom, I got married, I got a good government job, all that stuff. I got distracted from purpose, right? So I decide after hearing that voice, yeah, I love singing. I want to do that. So in fact, I call my cousin and, he produced, he engineered my produced track and everything. And moral of the story or end of the story, I was literally, after all of that, was a 2018 Grammy consideration for Best Gospel Single. Blew my mind because it was like the icing on the cake to say that once you overcome all of that stuff that we allow to hold us bondage and hostage, whether it be by our own selves or things that happen to us, once we release this, the things that we could do, I never thought. I'm like, who the funk? Me? A Grammy nomination consideration? Yeah. So needless to say, I'll be singing some more.
And it wasn't as if you really, and I think this is the beauty of it. It's not as if you are saying when you're going into it that this is what you're trying to achieve, right? It is a result of you releasing what is always what has always been inside of you
Absolutely.
out into the world. Now, I
Absolutely.
mean, I'm going to tell you something. I think we talked about this briefly. Is that, and I've told maybe one other person that I think that I've done flamenco as a result of trying to be, trying to speed up my healing. I had some issues a while back, and I thought sort of the rapid percussion of the feet would help me move into the space. Then I got to the point where I said, I think I know how to sing the way they sing. A small voice, because they don't sing like in the African American tradition. You got to hit certain note. You got to have a certain thing. And if you do not have that certain thing, well, I don't think I have that. In fact, I know I don't have that. But in another culture, I said, I think I can do it the way these guys do it. So literally, now I haven't done it yet. I'm going to call up the guy that knows how to do it, and I'm going to pay him the money, and I'm going to say, teach me what you know about how to do it. I'm going to do it. I already made that. This is weeks in the making, months in the making.
But you're saying something so deep, David, because listen to this, and I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
You're coming out of your norm. You're out of the box, right? So what you've known to be maybe singing or structural notes and things of that nature is what you are familiar with. But again, when we're dealing with purpose and kind of coming out and being ourselves, that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the arena that you're to sing in. You know what I mean? But this here is where you're supposed to be. And when I say that, because I don't even know if I shared this one with you, but I was the same way. Like, real talk. I grew up basically, of course, in the African American church. So you have to have runs and you got to, hit it around people and all that. And I'm like, well, I don't do all that. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
You don't do that? You don't do that?
I got some stuff for you, but I was like, I don't, and this is the thing, right? I'm going to throw this in there, how we compare ourselves, right? I was comparing myself to who I thought was amazing singers, right? But I forgot to think about they're amazing in their own right. And if I am amazing in my own right, I don't have to sing like them, right? So I didn't even share this one with you. I forgot to tell you that while in California, I found myself a minister on staff at a church that a very known gospel artist. And I used to look to them like, oh my gosh, like they are the ones. And then I find myself wedged between the two of them, right? Amazing women. And I think I'll just call their name out just so that I can give them homage. But Erica Campbell and Tina Campbell, known as Mary Mary, I'm standing in between them and I'm singing and I'm like, and nobody knows this. It's the first time I share this with you, David. I'm so excited because in myself, I'm going, I am holding my own. Come on, man. I was just like, yeah. And again, it wasn't because I was in competition with anyone. I was just feeling free to finally accept my own exuberance, my own whatever. I'm like, from being in so much bondage of thinking that I couldn't sing, I'm standing in between, like, not nominations, but Grammy, Stellar. And I'm like holding that note and they looked over like, yeah, that's me, Baltimore, like, that's me, And again, it was just feeling that I was operating in my purpose, that was amazing to me.
Well, in addition, I mean, you discussed or you told us about the singing, but when we had the conversation, you also brought up this thing where you were going to get this beauty license, and so that you didn't have it, or you had it, or it took some time to get it, or how did that story work? Well, how did you become? Where did your ability to do hair? Where did that come from? Or how did it? Where did it?
I truly, again, just have to attribute it to being a creator. If you are one who has to create, you will find so many means in order to do so. And before I had ventured out to even train in my mind or believing that I could do any singing outside of my little circle, I knew that I was gifted in using my hands to create different hairstyles.
Mm-hmm.
And, then, like doing hair, and I'm telling, people coming like, oh, you want the, and I'm going to date myself, of course, but they like, you want the big, nice French roll? You have got to go to Renee. She's going to make you, like, I just, and again,
hook it up. You could hook it up. Yeah.
Hooking it up. You had to, before they were called sideburns, I had to, it was going on. You had different colors all up there and everything. And again, I was just creating.
Uh-huh.
But what I didn't know, like I said, in continuing my process and journey, I was also imparting, because that was still an opportunity to beautify someone on the outside, but be able to speak to that person on the inside, and I've got people who, hair I've done probably 20, 30 years. Like, it's some people who give me stories on Facebook. They'd be like, I remember when you did my hair and you told me that I could do anything and I could, what I'm saying? And I opened up my business. So I now have my license, and I'm like, this, and I'm like, wow, like I didn't even realize at that point that I was operating in what I was.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand, because I have a similar story, and I guess I have been doing this kind of thing for a while, but I didn't, know what it was. And I thought, what did I think? David, what did you think? I just knew from a very early age that everybody had an ability and everybody had a talent. And I was curious as to what that was. I never felt that one person's talent was better. This sounds crazy, but better than somebody else's. It's just a matter of how much each individual was into, I guess, as you say, into their purpose. So it would manifest in direct correlation to how much they were in moving in their purpose. So I was curious, when I would meet somebody, where at what point were they in their purpose? Does that sound right? So, and that means everyone that I would meet, every single person.
We meet people on purpose, and it's just being able to how fast we can figure out what is that purpose, and even the timeline that person is supposed to be on your journey. Because sometimes we'll hold on to people on a journey that we suppose had left off, or we drop somebody off too soon, and it's like, whoa, wait, you're supposed to have been further down this journey with me, So it's really like, and it's funny, it might sound funny, but when I meet people, I immediately, they don't know, but they will now, but I go, okay, what part of my journey are they supposed to be on? And how long am I supposed to be on this journey with them? And one of the things that helps also is it helps you to understand not only your purpose, but that person's purpose in you. And then it helps you to then let that person know what their purpose is. Because you may be connected to someone who doesn't know their purpose either. And they're just like, I just know I'm supposed to have been with you. And it's like, you know what? Oh, it's because blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, oh, and then if it's your time to kind of go off on that journey, that person then is able to operate in purpose, connect with another person, because now they know their purpose. Then they'll know the reason why that they're with that person and help. And that's how it happens.
And this wasn't happening when we were growing up, you think? Or maybe it just was happening with other people that we didn't know?
I think that it was happening to us as we were growing up. But we did not know to focus or understand that. And I use these words all the time because we were distracted, right? I do. We were distracted and didn't realize we were distracted, which is the same as being unfocused, and not being able to focus in because we had too many other factors going on. Yeah, but it was happening then. And I just believe that when you are purposed in who you are, no matter what or where you go, you're still going to operate in it. The clicker is just knowing that you're in it. It's going to happen. You're going to find yourself in places where where you're like, how did I wind up here? You know what I mean? Because
Mm.
you were purposed to go there, but it's not even how did you wind up here? Now that you're here, why am I here? What am I to do while I'm here? What is it that I'm supposed to get or give while I'm here?
Mm. This is interesting. I mean, and also there are a number of other things we haven't talked about, like you've written books,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the title of the book that you mentioned earlier?
The first book was
Uh-huh.
A Minute to Think About It.
Uh-huh.
And it literally was just because of that. It was taking 60 seconds to change a negative thought to a positive one. Out of all the thoughts that we have, over 82% of them are negative. And we don't even realize that. You know, I hone in on what people say. So
Mm-hmm.
people are thinking, Renee, you too deep. You just take every word. It's because what we speak, we really don't understand the power that we have in it. When
Sure.
I hear someone say, oh my God, I'm so stupid, I was going to do, and I'm like, don't say that. And I'm like, what? I mean, no. You have just pronounced and professed over yourself the inability to utilize the intellect that you have. Now, for some people, they're like, Renee, that's way too much. But I'm like, that is so the truth. I'm like, so when we don't think about the things that we think about, we just say them, whether it because of our environment, our background, our upbringing, our schooling, whatever. We just say what we've been rehearsed or taught in the past. But when we stop and go, wait a minute, let me think about that, you come up with something else. You know what I mean? So the
Mm-hmm.
first book is just a minute to think about it. I just want people to think about what they think about, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then my second book was How to Overcome Sexual Abuse, and that's the Silent Screams. And it covers, again, a little bit about the 6 to 16 of my life and, you know, the things that had happened that got me to a different place in my life from all of the bondage and brokenness and things that had happened at that time to kind of put me in a space that I wasn't operating in my true self because I didn't know who my true self was.
It's very, very interesting. What's the phrase? What's the word in the Bible that the the gift of life and death is in the tongue, something like this?
Power of the tongue. Yes, it is. It is
Yeah.
the life and death is in the power of the tongue. It truly is. And the crazy thing is, look, so I'm gonna go a little different because my whole business, ministry, everything, whatever I stand for is out the box. So
Mm-hmm.
that scripture says that the power of life and death is in our tongue. However, it is the belief of what we speak that
Sure,
holds.
sure, 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 sure. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, sure.
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I can go. I mean, there's so many things that are coming up. In terms of what you're talking about, do you believe that in this era of Oprah, in this era of what's the guy's name, Eckhart Tolle, and I mean, there seems to be more awareness of
Yeah.
this kind of conversation or this kind of, and in fact, one would argue that Oprah might be one of the people that
The brown grape.
late to the table, and so she was able to give it maybe a lot more,
Mm-hmm.
but she was late in terms of this.
Mm-hmm.
People have been talking about in this way for a while. Do you think, in terms of the Black community, maybe the question is, where do you think we are at this point with regard to what you've just laid out in terms of understanding,
I
positive thinking?
I think that I think we've known it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't have the confidence to let our voice be heard,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now with this so much openness of speech and the freedom to express and not receiving the backlash or you know the deep criticism that it was, that now people are saying, listen, I can't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have to speak. And because it has oppressed us for so long, the oppression, like anything, like, okay, if you put a pot of water and you steam it, at some point it's going to boil over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we've been in the pot too long, letting it like simmer, but now it's boiling over. And because it's more embraced, even mental health. It's more embraced. So it's like, let's talk about this. Let's deal with this stuff because I've been living with it for so long. And even if we go back to some of the actions, and I think we spoke about this, about dealing with people outward behaviors of what's really inner things going on, right? Now, if we're looking at, you know, different things, the criminal justice system, like I said, the mental health piece, and we start going back into what's causing these behaviors. Now we're going back to, oh, wait, just throwing out a name. Oh, so James and Joanne had been sexually molested in the 3rd grade. So it wasn't that they were just kids who didn't listen. They were dealing with some things at home or dealing with some things in here that cause outward behaviors. Now we're taking a little bit more in-depth look as to what's going on with these individuals. And that platform, we have a platform now that we can speak about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really want to say thank you for people who are in very predominant positions who have opened up the gateways for people who, you know, names are not known or they're not, you know, in the forefront of anything, to be able to come up and go, hey, I need to speak about this. So I want, you know, I'm very grateful for that, because it just takes people to start saying, hey, no longer. This is what we're going to do. And it's for the greater good. It's for a greater cause. So I think that our voices were just stifled back then. We wanted to talk about it, and we did in smaller groups, but now the platform is more open for us to be able to do it openly and more freely.
Well, I think I'll put it this way. I always knew that I could dance. When we bring up, you know, I'll use the dance example. It's as if dance, I'll tell you what my inner voice is saying. That dance is the thing. David, dance is your thing. But I thought, well, I need to be able to function in a different world, because I don't want dance to be, this is me thinking, I don't want dance to be the only thing that people know me for. Now, that could be ego, that could be a number of different things. In other words, I knew that if I had followed that purpose, everything would have worked out. I think everything, and it would have happened much quicker, right? I have gone, but even going this different route, you know, I'm fine with it, and it has produced a lot of great things. But I know what my inner voice, dance is the number one thing, and if I'm not doing it, then a whole bunch of bad things start to happen. This is me saying it, you know, the way that I
But
think.
you know, David, dance is your own, this is the thing, hear me with this one.
Okay.
Dance is your own deliverance and healing for you to be able to do all the other things.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like being that of a creator, it's like you're not stifled to just one thing, because creating is huge, right? Like singing for me and writing for me, I do it for my healing, but in fact, it helps other people. But because I create, I may not be writing, but if I'm doing your hair, I'm still creating with these. You know what I mean? And and if I'm being an impartation strategist and I'm pouring into someone and pulling out of someone, guess what? I'm still doing that thing for others. But when those moments I need to pour back into myself, to be like a tree planted by the river, bringing in my own, right? Then I'm going to sing something and I'm going to write something, right? And it gives me the strength and the ability to go out and do other things. That dance for you, like you said, yes, I can do it. I know, you know, I know that I'm good at it. I know, but it brings you that healing that you need too, and your deliverance and your wholeness for you to go out and do all the other spokes on that umbrella to help create and be more creative.
Okay. All right. Well, it's very funny, because at some point I was like, David, when you're not dancing, like, it is not a good thing, right? So you just keep, whatever happens, you got to figure out a way, which is why I always say to people, like, at least on social media, I've developed this statement called, like, I'll always say, you know, keep it moving or keep moving. And everything on social media is different ways, manifestations, videos of movement, right? So what I've also told people is that I can sense people's talent and ability just by interacting with them. And I know, let's say, where they would be on the scale in their different thing, right? So that's helped me in a number of ways as well. Sometimes it comes, let's say, for example, when we were talking about, there's a new job that I started, I had interviews before, and my expectation was that the interview would go a certain way because everybody's professional, right? So I would present myself professionally, and they would present themselves professionally, and it would be all good.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they say no, I would come away feeling like saying, okay, yeah, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
What I found is, and I think this happens to everybody, is that there came a moment where I said, I'm going to put everything that I know I can do on the CV. Now, when I first started, I didn't do that. I would remove dance, right? I would remove dance. I wouldn't put it, but gradually as I started to move, up, I guess I would get more experience in the sort of the straight areas, so-called straight areas, with things that they expect you to have. Then on the back end, I would put dance, and then put that on and I just think it's just interesting because I think what my experience has been is that when they see the CV, they go right to that. They'll see the CV, and that will be the thing in terms of whether they're on board or not. Does that make, am I making any sense? And then, or if they missed it and then they find out later that I'm a dancer, then the whole thing goes in a different direction. Right? So the dance has been, it's almost like it is my way. It's like being an antenna, a live human antenna. And that's one of the things that isn't necessarily, I mean, that's not, nobody's looking for that in a 9-to-5 job. They just want to know if you have the skill set. I will say that to say that that has changed the way I have interacted and the way that people receive me in an increasing way. So in other words, I've become more of who I am over time without apologies.
I like
that. And therefore I've been more effective. But that didn't happen overnight. Right? So when I didn't believe it, when I would put it on the CV and I'm or if there was a hesitation, then there was a mixed vibe or I had to literally align with what I wrote on the paper. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? And I'm bringing this up. I'm trying to relate to what it is that you said. Does that make any?
Absolutely. Because what happens is, like you were saying, you knew you did it, you knew you were good at it, but you weren't ready or sure for anybody else to start talking to you about it. So it's like, I'm not going to go here right here, you know what I mean? Because it is what I do. But the crazy thing about it is because it's who you are in purpose, like you said, it can change the way someone interacts. Because if you're all professional, which is good, but again, we were talking about, we are creators. So if we're doing the norm and fitting in the boxes, it's odd because that's not just who we are. Right. So once we open up and let someone or let ourselves ooze out of the box, then it's like, now you're being your true self. Now I feel connected to you. I can interact with you now because I know that you're this person, but there's something else about you that still kind of feels like stifled. So then when you start going this way, it's like, oh, now I'm able to interact with your true self. And that's something that we miss sometimes. We don't operate in our true self. We know how, and I don't know, I think we talked about this a little bit. I think our generation, we know how to conduct ourselves in a certain way because we were given that template to do it that way. And if we did anything outside of that, there may have been some repercussions. But as we got older, like you said, and start dealing more with self and just kind of getting to a point where it's like, no, look, at whatever cost, I'm gonna be me. And you start doing that, truthfully enough, you're more accepted in doing that than we thought we were doing the right thing by operating in the template.
Yeah, it does. It did take a long, and maybe because we're older now, and so and it's, and the younger generation are just like,
Yeah,
They're
they just
doing their own thing. They're done now. You know what I mean? So now we're like, okay, I mean, I'm at least now accepted by, you know, but the older generation really not, that wasn't something they just, as you said, they were like, you got to get a job.
Yeah. And like I told you before, when I tried to model myself and understanding what it was to be a Black productive woman, and whether it be in mom or be in, you know, in business, truthfully speaking, crazily enough, the only thing I had to see for me at that time was Claire Huxtable.
Right,
I'm like,
right.
you know, I'm looking at this show like, how do I be a mom? How do I be, you know what I mean? And it was that character that was like, hey, pour into your children, pour into your community, help them to change the perspective of, like I said, what the template is to do something different. Because we kind of was taught, if you do the same, you may not get in trouble, or you know, or you may not stick out. But again, I'm going to say this, as a creator, we stick out.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just what it is. It really is. We stick out. Yeah.
And like, now that you brought up the this role of the Black woman, I want to ask this question because I'll tell you what I think after you tell me.
Okay.
What's going on with Black women of our generation versus generation ahead, well, older than us, the older generation, and then can you give me what you see the differences or between our generation, Black women in our generation, and the younger coming up?
The generation before us was kind of stuck in between. Do I go full force in what it is I do, or do I stay connected? Because we're talking the kind of 50s, 60s before you got to the 70s. And so you still had civil rights, you still had discrimination, you still had a lot of things that were prevalent at that time that kind of held them to a certain a box where they had to kind of stay within that box in order not to like ruffle too many feathers. But much kudos to those who taught us, right? That I know that I'm in this box, but I'm fighting some history before me, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you enough to be able to take that box, I mean, to get out of that box and do something different. So then you have our generation who's like, okay, my mom didn't speak much, but she taught me enough, or my dad or whatever, well, my community taught me enough to say, you have a voice and you can speak. Right? So then we get to this generation and we like, oh, wait, you know, now at the same time, we're still dealing with stuff that we got to fight off, the 70s, 80s group, right? We're fighting off some of the stuff that we didn't get, but we still know that we have a voice. 50, 60 said, don't have a voice, right? Be quiet and kind of chill. 70, 80s is like, you have a voice, you know, are you going to use it? You know, and we're like, okay, then 90s, 2000 is like, I don't even care if my voice has a message. I'm going to say something. You know what I mean? So, you know, we got more vocal. And, you know, sadly to say, though, I got to say 50s, 60s taught us some stuff that if we're going to be vocal, we're going to be vocal with substance. And I think that we've kind of fallen in the 70s, 80s, because while we were speaking, some of what we were speaking may not have been the best, and 90s, 2000 picked up that part and they started putting it out there. And again, that's only a fraction. That's not all, because we have the 90s, 2000s that are some powerful speaking, you know, message. They're doing it, you know, but I think as it kind of goes on, we're just becoming more and more vocal, and we have to be mindful of what we're feeding so that when we're more vocal, we're making an impact that is a positive one.
Right.
I think that's it.
It is an interesting times. We are living some interesting times. I literally got off the phone with a colleague who said more or less what you just said, but in terms of generations, both men and women, right? So he's looking at his children and his nieces and nephews, and he's worried. You know, he's worried, and I think every generation goes through that, right? But I do think, you know, this idea of creation. This is something that is going to be more and more important as we continue this lockdown or semi-lockdown. And this channel or this idea came as a result. It was already in my head. It was already someone encouraged me to do this years before, but I realized it wasn't the right time because, well, you know, people were busy doing their own thing. Like, you know, who's gonna listen to me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But because of, you know, everyone's home and no one could go out, this is when I said, all right, now is the time to do it, because
Strategic, because listen, we were doing the work while others were speaking.
Okay.
Then the shift came, right? It's the changing of the guards. So while people were focused, and I told you about this focus and distraction, while people were focused on those who were in the forefront, we were doing the work. Not too many knew our name. I mean, but we were in the trenches doing what we needed to do. And now, because everything is shut down, it's like, wait, now I can come forth because I've been doing the work. So this isn't something new to me. This isn't something I'm just kind of jumping out there to see if it works. This is something I've been like tilling the ground and planting seed. Now is the time. It's just the harvest at this moment. So see my blossoms. See, you know, see my, you know, see this. And again, and not in a perspective where it's like, you know, roll of thunder, hear my cry, but just like, hey, I've been doing the work, and I don't want to mess up her name. Ayana
Van Sant.
Yes. Yeah. She said, I watched and she said, I've already done the work. Right. Now, you know, and again, she puts her story out or whatever, but it's like when you get to talk to someone like you or myself, it's like we've done the work. So now it's our time to be able to either help or to put out, to make sure that the work that we've done is definitely not in vain, but that we're here now in the forefront to be able to help those others whose name may not be out there, but it's on its way.
Look, before we close, I'm going to ask you, this may take a little while, but we're going to bring up the subject of Lauryn Hill. Right. Okay. And I'm gonna allow we in our last discussion, we have a pre-interview before we actually go
we haven't even talked about the movie.
You're actually, and we can talk about your movie as well.
Okay.
Because I mean, I wasn't even gonna ask you, well, what else do you do? Like, the next question was like, is there anything else that you do that we didn't talk about when we were in the pre-interview? But generally what happens is I call the people up and we talk about 30 minutes. Yeah. Sometimes in this instance, there are a couple of days that went by before we actually did this, you know, that we're doing the interview. But tell us about the movie, or tell us how this idea of the movie came to you, and where it is at this moment. And then when we end, we'll talk about Lauryn Hill, because I think it's important, and specifically with regard to Black women, but we can double back on that.
Okay. So I've written a movie entitled A Better Baltimore, and I didn't put T, so it's A Better Baltimore. I say that because you can check That's anything. Right. We never pronounce the T. Right. And as I was writing the film, I was like, you know what? T is for trust. The city doesn't have any, you know? So it's A Better Baltimore. It's without the T, because that city, like I said, is without trust. I wrote the story, and my lead character is an African-American officer. And it kind of just follows, you know, an officer who joined the force for every good reason, but having to understand that he's dealing with the streets and a corrupt system as well. So he's torn between, you know, having to fight both what's going on and coming at him from the streets, but also what's coming at him from the precinct. Now, he's my lead character, but here's some more in depth about the movie. I want people to see officers as humans. And again, here I go, swimming upstream, you know, swimming against the current, because when we remove titles from people, when we take away officer or law enforcer, we have to look at, we have men and women who are doing a job. And at the end of the day, they have families. They come in, they want to go home too. Just because they're not behind a desk typing anything, or, you know, or at a store or something, they want to return back to their families too. Now, I was inspired because after the Freddie Gray riots and everything in Baltimore, A very dear friend of mine was actually the officer who was driving the paddy wagon of Freddie Gray. And he was the officer who received the most charges in his death. Now, I worked for Baltimore City Police Officer as a Baltimore City Police Department as a 911 operator. So I'm very familiar with the officers, with the people. And I know that that's not the overall tone of Baltimore City officers. And knowing this officer personally that, got all the charges, I know that that's not that character of that individual. And these are not what we see. This is, like I said before earlier, I remember Officer Friendly and McGruff, the crime dog, and the PAL Center. All Baltimore City or all law enforcement areas that was helping the community. And I was like, they need to see that. But then I also know that my other lead character is a female officer. We don't talk about the female officers too tough who have to struggle and deal with other things that go on in their lives. Sadly enough, even though you may be a law enforcement and a female, you may be going through domestic violence. You have been sexually abused. Those are the things that have happened in your background that if we start seeing these people as individuals and deal with them for the core of who they are and take away the title, we can see these individuals and start creating real answers for Baltimore, real answers for other cities who have a really big problem with their law enforcement not connecting with their community. The last piece of that movie, and I'll shut it down, is I wrote from the standpoint of the next generation, as we talked about, and how they're looking at and perceive our law enforcement. Where are they seeing them? What do they have to say? Because they're affected, because it's our generation and generation beyond and their generation that is almost being wiped out by those who are on the force that are on there and are corrupting the system. They have a voice, and many of them are not just speaking something negative, but they have powerful messages that they need to say and come across to be able to then keep their age group in a position where they not only respect authority, but they understand that the authority that is set over them or whatever is understanding that without some kind of structure, there's chaos.
Right, I understand.
And we're teaching, or we're showing through the media and stuff, how to disregard or disrespect authority, but that brings upon a lot of chaos and demoralization and taking down structure, which will only bring about more drama and craziness.
Right. So I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying, and it's almost like this. It doesn't have to be. The response does not have to be every single time counter to the system.
Yes.
And many times it's not counter to the system. A lot of times, in other words, the narrative that's being created or is being perpetuated is that all cops are bad.
Right.
Cops are solely responsible for all of what's going on with the Black community, the ills of the Black community. And you and I both know, and many other people know, that that is not the case. And what's irresponsible about the narrative that's being pushed out there, and by mainstream, and it could be argued by other sources.
It's strategically put out there that way.
So that there's only one way of looking at what's happening. And it's almost like this. It's like, how many people in the United States? Close to what? 350 million or something, like 355. I have to get the correct figure. And what happens is, in the news, they'll take something that is isolated and then blow that thing up so that everybody in the country can see it.
Absolutely.
And we already have a narrative. We have a narrative, American narrative, that, there have been injustices, there have been inequities. We know that, right? But what's happening is that people are feeding into the narrative and not just showing the success
And that's what I want to change. What I tell you from my book, I want you to think about what you think about. I want you to change from operating out of the emotion and deal with intellect. Let's think about some things.
Yeah.
And that in itself is what I want people to walk away from the film. I mean, they're going to probably have, you know, their thoughts, and I want them to. I want to invoke some thought, you know, thinking like, well, dang, I thought this way. My director who did the film was like, yo, I had to change how I thought about it. He was like, because I totally saw exactly what the mainstream was showing me with police. And he was like, even my own experiences with officers wasn't good until I did this film, and I had to change because I had to look at a different perspective. I want people to walk away from this film doing just that. Like, okay, yeah, I went in this way thinking that, but I walked out like, okay, maybe I should look at it like this.
So is it safe to say that, say, for example, the person who said, I had to change my perspective, the director, you said? What? So let's say, for example, next time he gets stopped by a cop. In some ways, what you're saying is that you have more than one way of responding, or more, at least you have more tools, and you may know what to say when something like that happens.
Absolutely. Because when law enforcement stops me, am I just seeing that it's a badge, or I'm interacting because it's an individual? It's a human. You know what I mean?
It's a human being.
It's a human being.
Right. So the moment that I fall into the trap of the narrative, I'm already in trouble.
And it helps both people, because let's use that as an instance. You're stopped by a cop, right?
Yes.
White, you're stopped by a cop. If you're already in the mindset of defense, that's what you're going to project.
That's right.
And when you project defense, what are you going to get back? You're going to get a counteract of that defense. But if you don't, and again, I'm not saying that this is 100% like this is, you know, because you still have individuals. But if you approach the individual as an individual, I guarantee you, though, I mean, unless this is really one of the ones that's just way out the norm, you're going to get a different response. You know, it has happened to me. I'm so serious. And living in California, I got stopped by the cops, and I'm like literally almost on edge at first, because I'm just like, I don't know what's going to happen to me. Again, feeding into what's out there. I could just, and then when I was like, you know what, we're going to stop. Came up, hi officer, how are you? Right? And yeah, they did have a nasty disposition. Let's just keep it for real. Yeah. But when I continued to maintain what I didn't allow their disposition to take me to another level. So I didn't give them reason. Not that I'm making that like, you know, the excuse, but, and I mean, there was several times that I wanted to, because they were really nasty. And I could have been like, you know, being that of a very vocal person, you know, I could have been like, you know, why are you talking to me like that? But what is it? We didn't need to go there. Let's go ahead and deal with whatever this is. And I get to walk away with my life. I may walk away with hurt feelings, different thoughts about how you treated me, but I walked away. And I think that at the end of the day, that's what we want to see people do, walk away. I'd rather you walk away feeling that you were disrespected with your life than not walk away at all, and everybody else has to deal with, you know what I'm saying, the what you could have changed. That's just me, you know, but that's all.
I get it. Look, there's so many things that, because also when you're telling stories, it's why there should be diversity in the newsroom or in society, in corporations, because you get a different angle, a different perspective that could actually make the difference between you making your target, not making your target, making money, not making money, saving somebody's life, actually not saving someone's life, right? Yeah. So I mean, it's a huge, we're all over the map. And it's, I guess what's happening now is that I believe that what you've just talked about, this diversity of perspective, is part of what's going to happen as a result of what we're experiencing with COVID. Because there can't just be one way, which is what they're trying to prescribe right now. Like, you take the vaccine, that's it. Or, you know, I mean, there's just too many other things happening for it to be just one way.
And David, I don't even know when I talked with you that I had even divulged the information that I was COVID positive.
I think you did. We
I
talked
did.
about it. We touched about it. Yeah,
I
but it
mean,
didn't affect you. It did not. You were in and out, or it wasn't like right what other people go through.
yeah, and I'm like, I've since tested negative, but
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the one way, I haven't been vaccinated, but I've been educated
Mm-hmm.
and used the knowledge that I have for wisdom to take heed to building my immune, you know, taking what is naturally given to us, even from the earth, to heal
Mm-hmm.
ourselves,
Yeah.
citrus and garlic and things that, you don't even have to get a prescription for, but I'm gonna leave that alone because,
Right. Yeah.
there
Because
I go
it
again.
is controversial. And look, we're still at the beginning stages, but I think that'll be that will be part of what will come out of this diversity thinking. That's
Hmm.
what I think it is,
Hmm.
that we grew up with, and now we are in positions where we can actually voice. That's what's
Yeah,
happening, right?
yeah.
The
There we go with that
diversity
voice.
lessons that we learn are now beginning to take shape,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And it's not all happening consistently throughout all of society, but it is moving into place. And I think that's one of the reasons why you and I now are having the conversation, and even will have more and more influence based on what we do.
yeah, absolutely.
We're going to lead. Tell me the Lauren Hill story. I think it's interesting because it's very, just real quick, I've had conversations all this week,
Hmm.
and I've gone in maybe thinking like for example, in this instance, I had been thinking about Lauren before our conversation.
El Boogie.
Right. So I had her name came up, not just with me, but with other people. So then when you and I are talking, and it was totally, we weren't even talking about her,
Not even
and you
going.
just brought up her name, and I just started chuckling to myself. So tell me, why did Lauren's name come up in our conversation before? Do you remember?
Um, I think it was because I was talking about total acceptance.
Uh-huh.
How when we are put sometimes in positions where people have created who they want us to be,
Uh-huh.
and then we have to live up to that, how it actually puts us in bondage. And I was saying how Lauren is most popularly known for her miseducation and her work with the Fugees.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying that her best work for me was her Unplugged,
Mm-hmm.
because it was Lauren as her natural self. It was Lauren discovering not who anyone else said Lauren Hill was, but Lauren Hill discovering who Lauren was, and listening to that intently, like listening to the lyrics and her speaking, and not just the instrumentals, but listening to her say that not only did she reintroduce herself to herself, she had to reintroduce herself to everybody she had known, because she had finally actually met herself. She
Right.
had finally come to know who she was. And then, she said when she did that, when she learned herself and started saying, hey, I'm Lauren Hill, she wasn't as interesting anymore, because there wasn't the person that they had created. They wanted to accept some of her. And she's like, you can't accept 2/3 of me. Listen, I'm finally whole now,
Uh-huh.
right? And I was allowing, this is kind of me in a sense speaking, I guess, for her through what I kind of got from what
That's
she
okay.
said. I was allowing people to fragment me and
Uh-huh.
give me portions of a Lauren Hill. But now that I've taken those fragments and I've dealt with my own stuff, and I'm now, a true whole, this is what you're going to get, my true whole self. And I mean, it even affected, how people looked at her music. They're like, oh my God, what is that Unplugged? Why would she do that? I just don't get. And it's like, then that means that you still have some dealings to do with yourself, because that must mean that you were an individual who created a Lauren Hill out of your figment of
Mm-hmm.
mindset to who you wanted her to be. But she's telling you, I'm now who I truly am.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that. I've never met her or anything like that. But again, I look at models
Mm-hmm.
of individuals who I believe are making an impact, not so much is on the outside, but first doing the work on the inside and making that impact. That right there is what's going to make everything better when you deal with the self, when you deal with core. And I'm like, with that being said, again, she was placed as a political figure, for outspoken, but again, she was speaking to me who and what people wanted her to be. And I'm just so like, I am L Boogie for life, especially after that, the soul searching and the inner core dealings with self to, first of all, still be able to be like effective after dealing with self. Because we don't really know all of what's in there for people,
Sure.
but to still, again, overcome, not survive, but overcome that and still be great. I just give her I just give her total kudos. Like, I'm serious. Like, you did the work, Lauren. And I thank you for that, because again, you were on a platform where people looked at you and looked to you. So now you're able to say, hey, I looked to me, found me, and okay with me. I'm good with me. And now I want to share all of me with you.
Right. Okay.
I just let her know, however way this might even get to her, I receive all of you, because that is amazing. And I'm serious. That's some good stuff.
Well, look, I'll let that be the last. Is there anything else that you want to say before we?
I do. I just want to make sure that I'm accessible. A lot of times I do this and I forget to tell people, well, how do you reach me? So my website is www.RebirthofRenee.com. If you want to see anything that's going on with the movie, it's www.abetterbaltimore. Put that T back in there, betterbaltimore.us. You can find me on Facebook, Renee Ambush, and you can find me on Instagram at RebirthofRenee. So reach out. I love to talk. I don't know if that was, but I love to share. I love to impart. That's my purpose. My song is Destiny by Renee Ambush. You can find that on any platform that music is streamed or purchased, iTunes, any of the music platforms. And I'm very thankful and grateful that you allowed me to share myself with others. I am grateful for what you're doing right now. I totally and fully support it. As I said before, as creators, we have got to be in positions that we can create and have platforms like this one to be able to show the creativity that we have.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
As I now impart.
Yes, go on down and impart.
As I impart. But look, really, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And of course, I love hearing people talk, because I get to sit and learn, which I love doing. And it's coming directly from the people.
Yeah.
Right. And if you see, when I first started, it wasn't so clear, right, what I was going to do. But I think as a result, I'm not saying thank God for the COVID, but, this has been an opportunity. And I remember telling the barber, I said, well, yeah, but in times of crises, there are opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
So this is what we've created, and we hope that it continues, and, have more people like yourself come on in.
Absolutely.
And tell us.
Thank you. And we will be talking again, I'm sure.
Have a great evening. And I'll get this up as soon as I can. You send me the information that you want to have in the description.
Okay.
And then we make it happen, right?
Absolutely. Okay.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Get some rest.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.